under fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
What's up, guys? Good evening, and welcome to the program. Of course, I'm your boy Steve, and it is another episode of Stateside Footy Tuesday night. And listen, I gotta say, man, this work week has gotten off to a flying start. I couldn't have asked for a better start. But that being said, it's also Tuesday, so why not also cap this day off with a great show. All right. So before I begin, please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming Stateside Footy content. And if you guys are watching live on TikTok Live, the link is in the description for you to head on over to YouTube and show your boy some love. All right. So we actually have ourselves a fairly good show tonight as we're talking a little bit about the proposal of the expanded playoffs in Major League Soccer. And of course, I definitely have opinions on that because to me, it just reeks nothing but a cash grab and the watering down of yet even more regular season games. But before I get to there, I do want to talk a little bit about this because Flo Balogun, his name continues to get circulated with three teams being very interested in him. And that is PSG, FC Barcelona, Barça, and of course, my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. And it seems to be those three teams are circling the wagons. And of course, Ballo right now has been left. Yeah, like right now, he's not necessarily in first team training as he's kind of dealing with a little bit of a knock. It's not going to be long term. And I would probably expect him to be back in a week or two. And when you think about the upside of a guy like Balogun, considering that he's 25, 26, he's just getting into his prime, coming off a 20-goal season in all competition caliber season, you can understand why there's a little bit of intrigue. And when you talk about his performance in the World Cup this summer, you can understand why there's going to be some big clubs bite. Now, I guess the prevailing wisdom is that some people think that, the best fit is probably going to be Barca. I'm not necessarily sure about that. I don't necessarily know exactly the type of role that he's going to get. If it's going to be one of those type of first season type of things where he's going to get minutes, but he's not going to be the primary starter with the eventual eye of being the full-time starter in a year, potentially type scenario. Maybe they're looking at him as somebody who can come in and compete right away. That's very true. When I think about Tottenham, though, considering that they just got their winger through the door in Savinho, they just brought in a guy who, in my opinion, looks like he's probably going to be filling in that center attacking position. in Omar Mamouche. And of course, when you consider that James Madison just went down, that really does leave a hole in that striker position. And of course, there is rumors that Richarlison's going out the door, so there would be a fit for a guy like Flo Balogun to come in. And of course, depending on the size of the transfer fee, you're probably thinking he's going to be coming in right away and starting. Now, the question is whether or not a guy like Roberto De Zerbi rates him. But then again, these links pretty much just won't go away. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this week goes. And of course, the transfer window shuts in about a week. So we will find out exactly if Ballo is going to stay, if Ballo is going to go. But either way, it feels like he's on the cusp of a major move. And I think it's absolutely worth it. Again, when you think about the lineage of a guy like Flo Balogun, starting with a team like Arsenal, being sold, because essentially what Arsenal was saying was that you're not good enough, not only to play for us, but potentially in the Premier League, goes to France, bets on himself, develops, turns into, a guy who is essentially on the cusp of breaking out and being one of Europe's more prominent strikers, potentially. It almost feels like a big move is going to be on the cusp for somebody like that. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it goes. But that being said, I would probably assume that Flo Balogun is probably going to be wearing a different shirt in about a week. All right. I think somebody actually asked me in the TikTok chat what I thought about Liam Delap going to Nottingham Forest. It's a good move. It's a good move for Delap. It was obvious that he wasn't a good fit for Chelsea. All right. Let's go ahead and get into it because, quite frankly, I was actually a little surprised is not the right word. Let me just step back a little bit and say that it wasn't a surprise that MLS decides that, hey, listen, we're all about competition now. We're kind of flipping the switch to MLS 3.0. And there was a little bit of buzz about it because finally MLS is prioritizing competition. Okay, that's great. We heard about the proposed roster changes in the offseason. Of course, raising the salary cap to a number that is going to open the doors to Europe. It's going to allow progressive owners to spend because we have a bunch of owners in this league that absolutely want to spend. And the dissociation of allocation money, getting rid of that, which is going to make roster construction night and day better than what it is currently that we see in Major League Soccer. The other news that came out was the fact that, listen, we're going to expand the playoffs. And my first reaction was, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because currently the playoffs are already too big. Now, granted, Major League Soccer is a 30-team league. But in reality, when you look at, if you put the entire 30 teams into one table, only about 10 of them really should make the playoffs. 10 of them truly are worthy of competing in the postseason, while the rest of them are mid at best. And then, of course, when you factor in the play-in games, and since the advent of the play-in games, which is 8 versus 9, so 18 teams currently make it in. So you're talking about adding 2 more teams to the fray. Nothing of consequence has happened in those play-in games. They have been universally boring. And of course, the team that generally wins that one game shootout goes on and, plays the number 1 seed in the next round. And of course, what we have seen so far is there's been really not a lot of contest between 1 versus 8. As far as I'm concerned, it already is in a position where not only are you watering down the regular season because 60% of your teams make the playoffs, but it doesn't necessarily add anything to the drama of the playoffs. I remember a couple of years ago when Atlanta United played Montreal in the play-in in the Eastern Conference, and it was one of the more dull games I've ever seen. Atlanta ended up winning it, and then they go out and get absolutely just murked against Inter Miami. It was a completely pointless endeavor. Now what they're what they're proposing is a 20-team playoff. So now you're expanding your playoffs for no other reason than when this time's out, it is going to be at the end of the Apple deal, and it's something that they can shop to a new television broadcaster. That there are going to be more games that you can sell, more opportunities for you to sell advertising, and an opportunity for us to get a little bit of a higher profile when it comes to the playoffs. This is what I like to call the NFL style, the NFL model of playoffs. But it comes with a catch, because again, essentially what you're doing now is if 80% of your teams, 75, whatever, make the playoffs, you're essentially awarding mediocrity. Because not every team deserves to be in the playoffs. Not every team has earned the right to be in the playoffs. So, for instance, in the Eastern Conference right now, if things were to progress, your 9 and 10 seed is, well, there's 3 teams tied at 24 points. Orlando City, who have a negative 17 goal differential. Toronto, who only has 5 wins on the year, a negative 6 goal differential, and DC United, who also sits on 24 points with a negative 8 goal differential, also 5 wins. And 3 points behind that is Atlanta United, a negative 11 point differential, Philadelphia, a negative 7, and Montreal, who is also on 21 points. They have a negative 10 differential. In the middle of the pack, really, it's like the New York Red Bulls, NYCFC. Yes, currently because of points, they're in the playoff chase right now. But make no mistake, these teams are not going to get into the playoffs and do something special. Most of these rosters are pretty much flawed. There's a reason why NYCFC has 8 losses on the season. Red Bulls have 9. Orlando's got 11. In the Western Conference, your 9 and 10 would be Portland, who is 8-4-9, and Minnesota, who's currently 7-7-7 on a negative 2 goal differential, followed by San Diego, the LA Galaxy, and then 3 points behind that is Seattle, who are on a negative 5 goal differential, 9 losses already. And essentially what these are teams that are essentially going to be playoff filler. Inconsequential teams that, quite frankly, had never earned their way in. And and the interesting thing is, like, what I mean by that, it's like when you look at a playoff picture where only 5 in each conference makes it, it actually means that the regular season is worth playing. Because your top 5 in the Western Conference are Vancouver, Houston, who's having a pretty good season, LAFC on 35 points, San Jose, and then San Jose's tied on 33 points with 2 other teams, Dallas and St. Louis. In the Eastern Conference, Nashville's kind of running away with things. You have Miami, Chicago, New England on 34 points, and then Charlotte is your 5th place team. It would actually mean that your regular season is actually worth a damn, because those that actually do a very good job in the offseason, those that do a very good job in the summer transfer window to put themselves in a position to hit that September sprint, to get themselves in a position, not only would they be battling the top 5, but chances are pretty good they would probably finish in that top 5, meaning that they actually did it right. The biggest joke of this would be like a team like Seattle that came out of the World Cup break injured, proceeded to lose 8 in a row in the league, just ended up breaking that. But that being said, in order for them to turn their season around, they would have to go on one of the most insane sprints in order just to get there. Most likely falling short. There's a good chance that they're going to fall short anyways. But under this new proposal, they would make the playoffs. And essentially what this does is it makes a mockery of your playoffs, because most people are gonna look at this and be like, I'm not gonna really tune in until the quarterfinals, because that's when we're actually really going to start seeing good teams. Now, granted, of course, fans in those markets are going to watch because their team is quote unquote in the playoffs. But if you're really trying to attract a new audience, or trying to convince soccer fans that watch other leagues around the world to tune in for this, they're going to look at this like this is a complete sham, because they understand that the latter half in each conference has no business being there, and they're not going to tune in. It's not going to be worth it, right? And this is kind of a risky gamble for Major League Soccer, because this is something that they're trying to sell to a potential potential new television partners. And it's not like MLS has secrets, right? They're gonna withhold information. Of course, they're going to have the last 10 years of television numbers to make an informed decision about whether or not this is going to be good for business. Now, who knows how the next couple of years are going to play out, especially if they do make these roster changes. And who knows, maybe 4 or 5 teams just outspend everyone, and it creates some storylines within the last month of the season going into the playoffs, and who knows, maybe it sells. Obviously I can't predict the future, but what I will say is that as of right now, the regular season is already watered down. Nobody gives a shit in February and March. And, for the most part, teams generally play their worst in the the first portion of the season. Most teams really don't get their legs until the end of May anyway, which kind of buoys them into the summer months, where if you're treading water, you get to the transfer window, maybe you make a move or two, but really the season begins at the end of the summer transfer window, as you get into that September, early October timeframe, where points become absolutely serious, and then these teams try to make their push for the playoffs. That's as far as I'm concerned, as of right now, that's usually kind of like the diagram of teams that consistently make the playoffs. They understand that this thing isn't a race. Like, it doesn't matter if you lead the table in points at the end of April and May, because this thing is an absolute sprint. So these teams understand exactly how to outline their season, so they're going to be in the best possible position to make the playoffs. So they understand that August, September, early October is going to be the way to go. And because of it, nobody really pays attention. And just imagine if 80% of your field is making the playoffs. Not only are you rewarding mediocrity, but now you're essentially saying to your television audience that it doesn't matter. You don't need to pay attention until halfway through the season, 3/4 of the way through the season, as we're kind of ramping things up for the playoffs. It just makes it makes from an audience standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense. But you can understand why MLS is trying to go down this route, because it's been successful in other sports, right? This is like the quintessential thing that American sports leagues will do. Try to figure out a way to make more money for their owners when it comes to playoff time. Not understanding that some of the best playoffs happen with less teams. Let's see what Zero Cool in Real Life 2453 says. Look at the tournament structure like inverted pro rel answer. Not really. Let's see. All teams toward the top really want top 8. If 9 through 12, if not 9 through 12 is great. 13 through 20 basically not relegated, but tough road. Let's see. What's going on, Natesky? Good to see you, buddy. Let's see, 12 guaranteed spots, 4 up for grabs in the play-ins. It's not a big deal, good or bad. Good stuff is the double elimination up for the top 8 seed. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Here's the thing, though, right? It's inconsequential. I mean, really, at the end of the day, like nobody's going to be tuning in for these 2 play-in games. Nobody wants to see 2 teams that battle to the middle in the regular season play in this play-in game only to get absolutely shellacked in the next round. It makes absolutely terrible TV, and it doesn't do anything for the teams that finish in the middle. They're not going to improve anyways. Why would you spend money to try to climb your way into a higher seed when you can grab the 8th, 9th, or the 10th seed in the playoffs? It's going to be a race of attrition for more than half the teams in this league. Let's see. If I'm the 7th seed, why do I care that the 19th is playing the 13th before the real play? Yeah, that's exactly right, right? So why would you care? That's exactly right. Why would you care? Let's see, 34 game regular season with how big the playoff bracket is asinine. Yeah, but it's not only that, Condor, but it's also the things that are in between as well too, right? Because they're still especially when the calendar flips as well too, they're still going to try to shoehorn League's Cup into this equation as well too, on top of the fact that they're playing CONCACAF Champions League, which is probably going to have to get restructured. And then those that aren't playing in League's Cup are most likely going to be playing in the U.S. Open Cup. And so essentially what is going to happen is you're going to have teams play 50 games a year. 50 games a year, and if you're in the playoffs and you make a run, now all of a sudden it's going up to 60. It's unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable because again, there is absolutely no need for a 20-team playoff. Absolutely none. And by the way, if the owners would have just came out and said, "Hey, listen, this is good business for us," okay, cool. Okay, cool. But the funny thing is, they tout the line that this is going to create games of consequence in the regular season. And my first question is like, how? How does this do this? If 80% of your teams make the playoffs, how does this create games of consequence? I would wish somebody would explain it to me, because it absolutely doesn't. Because everybody makes the playoffs. Why don't you just have like a 30-team shootout and call it a season? Let's see. Alexander Mantooth says, any chance are we going to get 40 teams with Garber leaving? I don't know. I don't think so. I think expansion is pretty much done. Now I have heard that they're looking to potentially they're looking to add a couple more teams, maybe get up to 32. But the interesting thing about this is I'm also hearing rumor that there could be maybe a few years down the road that they're going to have a potential MLS 1, MLS 2. That they're going to have to break it up, because trying to manage 32 teams in a league, it's going to get a little crazy. And of course, when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to actual play, they're looking at different alternatives. And that is one of their alternatives, where they would just break it up into an MLS 1, MLS 2. You have, inter promotion and relegation, and they're hoping that is going to, appease the pro rel zealots, try to attract, more of the casual fan base in this country. I don't necessarily know if that's going to work, because again, it's a closed league. Nobody's going to look at MLS 2 as a second division, because nothing is going to change as far as like revenue sharing goes. So from that standpoint, I would probably think that maybe you would see something like that. But As far as like going to 40 teams, I think that's a little bit excessive, right? Especially considering that USL is about to launch their Premier Division, and it looks like the cities that they're targeting would really kind of throw a monkey wrench into like future expansion plans for Major League Soccer. Let's see. I'm sure the format will change every year after this. Yeah, see, that's the other problem, Average Joe. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this league chops and changes player format like every 3 years. Every 3 to 4 years, they introduce some little new wrinkle. And that would be, and this is the thing, with more expansion, this would also potentially cause another shift, especially if they add more teams. This would also cause another shift to add more playoff teams to a future playoff bracket down the line, which is something that this doesn't need. But the interesting thing about this is, like, if there is an MLS 1, MLS 2, there's going to be multiple playoff brackets in both, right? Because they're probably going to have like 1 or 2 automatic, and then like 10 teams gunning for like the 3rd or the 4th. You know what I mean? There'll be 4 teams going up, 4 teams going down, and they would have like some stupid, ridiculous playoff bracket to figure out exactly who's going to go up. Yeah, trust me, this is going to get even more wacky. But yeah, my biggest issue is the fact that it does nothing for your regular season. As a matter of fact, the only thing it does is tune fans off in a big way. It's already hard stomaching early season MLS games because the quality is absolutely poor. In some aspects, some teams are pretty good to start the season because they're looking to kind of pad their point stats a little bit. But most teams usually go through that first month just to kind of get their legs under them before getting into the season, and that first month is pretty terrible. But for the most part, the league doesn't really start getting good until the summer months, when you actually have better matchups as the schedule kind of gets a little bit better. But for the most part, now all of a sudden you add a crazy amount of playoff teams, and essentially what it does is it's fans are going to wait. Fans are going to wait until it actually matters, and even then, they're going to wait until the real playoffs start. And so, from a business standpoint, if you're trying to sell this to a potential television partner, you're going to have to tread lightly, because some of these dudes that run these broadcast companies, they're actually incredibly sharp, to the point where they're gonna weigh the cost risk benefit to this, and their chances are going to be incredibly good that they're going to get a low offer. Major League Soccer is hoping that the next television offer is going to be in that $500 million range. Like right now, it's like 250, 270. Like for the next couple of years of the Apple deal, I think this year was like at 250. I think the Sprint is at a discounted, and then the full season of the Switch is like at 275. And then it'll stay at 275 until the deal ends. And they're hoping that the next one they're going to get the windfall, right? They're going to get that, high level European television deal. And it's like, chances are pretty good that's not going to happen. Because again, it's the weird thing, right? Like, I'll give you a good example. Like, people get absolutely batshit crazy for the start of the European calendar. Not just Europeans, but also Americans as well too. There's a lot of people that can't wait for the Premier League to start, can't wait for the championship to start, and generally set their calendars to it. Follow along in the summer transfer window. They have their clubs, they have their teams, and generally cannot wait until the season starts. In Major League Soccer, there isn't that. Nobody, like when MLS Cup ends, nobody's like, ooh, except for hardcore MLS fans. That's about it. Like nobody is like setting their calendar to it, right? add this wrinkle into it, it's not going to get better. And I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but that being said, it's like the way to add consequence is not more playoff teams, it's less. And you actually give teams a reason to spend money in the offseason. You give a team a reason to be competitive, because if there's only a handful of spots in each conference, you're going to see teams actually understand that, oh, wait, if I actually make the playoffs, it means not only does it mean extra games for my owner to win, but it also means, especially if there's cash incentives for being in the playoffs, it's actually going to be even more of an incentive to get there. But when you just be like, all right, 20 teams, 10 in each conference, and all you have to do is finish 500, that gets you in. There's going to be no incentive, because all you have to do is just stumble your way into the playoffs. It not only waters down your regular season, but it also kind of waters down your playoffs. Let's see. This is basically MLS 1 with Jeopardy on 3 levels. I completely disagree with this. Seems like 32 teams is the magic number for U.S. leagues, with the NBA looking to expand also. Yeah, NFL's got 32. Yeah, the NBA wants to expand to 32, Seattle and Vegas. And I would probably assume that MLS is probably going to add a couple more teams. The question really is, like, which markets do you do it, right? That's going to be the interesting one. I'm trying to rack my brain right now to think if there are any attractive markets that have the financial. The city also has the financial wherewithal to help them, get a nice little shiny stadium built. Because they've already said no to Sacramento, they said no to Tampa Bay already, said no to Detroit. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how that would pan out. Well, MLS has been growing all along the way. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not growing. That's not what I'm not saying that at all. As a matter of fact, MLS has actually grown leaps and bounds, and you can see it on a 10-year basis. That's not what I'm saying at all. As a matter of fact, MLS doesn't get to 30 teams if the sport itself wasn't if the sport wasn't as popular. Like, for instance, like back in the 80s when the sport was very much not popular, if the sport of soccer still had, like, if Americans still had that blasé attitude toward soccer, none of this would have happened. MLS would have went by the wayside, just like the NASL, but it didn't. It actually grew and became popular, and there's millions of soccer fans in this country, millions upon millions. Some of them do watch Major League Soccer, but for the most part, it is that group of soccer fans that don't watch this league that MLS would love to have. And by the way, what they're also worried about is the USL, because the USL is giving the people what they want. At least in a small dose, they're going to attempt to give the people what they want. And it's something that, this is why MLS is coming out with MLS 3.0, because they realize, like, the next 5 years are going to be so important for their growth into that next generation, because they want to be that league that is synonymous with the American top flight. And so far they've been able to do it. But that being said, it's like, what happens? What happens if those casual fans that don't watch Major League Soccer start tuning into the USL because they gave the people what they want, and they found a way to do it by launching a competitor D1 league. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it. That's why Major League Soccer is expanding. It's expanding their cap. Trust me, if those plans were not announced and USL decided to continue with that same business model, there's a good chance that Major League Soccer doesn't up their salary cap. Not by the numbers that they're already proposing. Maybe maybe it continues on that 4% trajectory every single year. There's actually real competition in the market, is what I'm saying. That doesn't happen if the sport is not popular. It doesn't make the season critical at all. Not at all. More playoff teams does not make the season critical. It rewards mediocrity. And nobody tunes in for mediocrity. If you want to watch mediocre football, then watch the French league. I love this format. Double elimination for the top 8 is a huge incentive. Play-in zone has its own. Yeah, it's amazing once you break it down. It took me a while to understand it, though. Okay. Let's see. That's what soccer is anyways. This tournament, that tournament, this cup, that shield. Change this for that. That's not MLS. That's soccer. Look at Argentina. What the hell does it care about cup? Yeah, but this isn't a cup competition. This isn't a cup competition. A cup competition is incredibly straightforward. A subset group of teams play in a single elimination until you get to the final. All right, great. Pretty simple and straightforward. This is 80% of your league going into a playoff, double eliminations. You might as well just have a round robin. Why don't you make it even more convoluted? Like it would be sweet if it was just knockout until you get to the semifinal. That's actually incredibly straightforward. Like if you told me like 20 teams made the playoffs and it's single elimination until you get to the semifinal, that's actually pretty intriguing. Because now you're putting even the teams that played well in the regular season up against it, right? Because in that kind of situation, then it actually just comes down to the sport. Good team, in one-off, good teams get beat all the time. But if you're saying that it's cool, man. So after the play-in games, it's gonna be a 2-leg series or a best of 3. All you're doing is just ensuring that the best teams end up in the final because they're built for it, right? If that would actually be something I'd be in for. Like if they actually came out and said, yeah, dude, 20 teams make it, but it's single elimination until the semifinals, that I would actually be for that. Yeah, that's 20 teams. That's 20 teams. 16 plus 4 is 20. Yeah, so it's like what, 75%, something like that, whatever. It's still far too many teams making the playoffs. Yeah, the crazy thing is that, but here's the thing, right? Yeah, MLS has been growing, correct. They had to change the format anyways. They change the format every 3 years. They're constantly changing the playoff format. And the two-leg, a home and home, a 2-leg home and home with road goals was actually kind of intriguing. Because it incentivized teams to play in that first game. And of course, if you won 3-1, then the team going home would just park the bus. That was the downside of the road goals. That was the downside of the road goals. But I will say that even in that generation from like 2010 to 2016, you had some pretty compelling playoff matches. 1 through 8 have double elimination on top of the top bracket. It's pretty huge. Okay. Let's see. Eredivisie, Danish Super, Belgian Pro have weird formats. RE qualification, UA. Yeah, but none of this is going. Like the only thing that matters is like what the 4 teams that make it to the semifinal get in. I guess qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League the next year. I think it's something like that. But again, this has nothing like this is not a cup competition. This is playoffs. Nah, it's stupid. It's stupid. You guys will never convince me. You guys can shout out the rooftop all you want. You will never, ever, ever convince me that this is a great idea. The only like if you guys came up and said, I'm a DC United fan, this makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. That's your team. Or you're a Toronto fan, or a fan of Minnesota or Portland. And this is an opportunity for you guys to get into the playoffs. Understandable. That I can understand. But the idea that having 20 teams and you're essentially playing double elimination throughout, you're talking like what? A crazy amount of playoff games. Understand exactly why this is designed. This is not designed to find who your champion is. This is designed to sell more playoff games. That's it. That's it. This is an opportunity to potentially make more money on your TV deal, and it's also an opportunity for the television broadcasters to sell more ad space. That's it. That's it. That's why the NFL. That's exactly why the NFL does it. It's exactly why the NBA has the play-in. That's why they even created the NBA Cup, for Christ's sake. It's just an opportunity. It's just an opportunity for them to make more money. That's it. Now, on the surface, I don't really give a shit if the league is trying to make money. As long as, as far as I'm concerned, it's just about what makes sense. This isn't going to be a better way to crown a champion. Anything but. This is an opportunity just to have more playoff games and also increase schedule on players. That's the funny thing, and that's kind of like the hypocrisy, the underlying hypocrisy of it all, right? Because MLS wouldn't be the first league to talk about player safety. But sure, let's go ahead and expand the playoffs. Let's add like 15 more games to your schedule. Okay, I don't care what Brazil does. I care what America does. I care about my top flight. This isn't the way to do it. Let's see. Aaron said, "Spread the word. West Ham are back. Go Hammers in the championship." Would I add relegation to Major League Soccer? 100%. Yeah, I would. I would if I had the power to add promotion and relegation into the U.S. soccer pyramid, and if I actually had a solid way to streamline the entire pyramid, that would probably be my objective. Because in that instance, you actually don't need playoffs. You really don't. I mean, you could have a playoff, but you wouldn't need 20 teams to try to accomplish it. That's also another reason for these insane amounts of playoffs, because there's no promotion or relegation, right? You're trying to add games of consequences. You're trying to give people a reason to tune into your league. And, of course, the American way of thinking is like, let's just add more playoff teams. But there's also a trade-off. With it, right? Because you don't have those relegation scraps going down to the last game of the season. Like that is not like manufactured drama. Like that's the thing about these crazy expanded playoffs, is that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to manufacture drama. They're trying to sell something. And it's like, how are you going to sell, a 500 team and a less than 500 team making the playoffs? It's like, ooh, you got to tune in to watch. Like, why? The team that wins is going out in the very next round. Relegation is a gimmick in the U.S. in 2026. Okay, man. I respectfully disagree with you. That is the thing. Like last year's relegation. See, that's the thing. no playoffs in a major American sports league. Right? Like I just said, it's a very American thing to do. You gotta have playoffs. Why? Why? Every champion in the world just has the most points. It's universally accepted in the sport that the team that finishes at the top of the table with the most points wins. When playoffs are introduced, it's usually to find out who the third team going up is. But by the way, I don't mind playoffs as long as you reward the teams that actually tried the best in the regular season to get into that position to actually get into the playoffs. Not the teams that raced to the middle because they knew they were just going to make the playoffs. Like the interesting thing is, like I am a Seattle Sounders fan. I'm from Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, and I've been watching the Sounders since like their A-League days. And they've had a howler of a season. Started off okay when they were healthy. They go into the World Cup break, they come out, and they're absolutely broken. Can't stay healthy. The wheels have completely fallen off. They've lost 8. They lost 8 straight in the league before finally righting the ship. And they're sitting on 25 points. They are currently 3 points off the 9th seed right now. And there's a good, they just bought Dejan Joveljic, who is going to help. Make no mistake, he's going to help. But there's a good chance they miss out. But that being said, it's like if we were to incorporate these new goofy playoff systems, eventually, like when it's all said and done, they would make the playoffs. They have no business making the playoffs. They didn't earn it. And that's the thing. It's like sporting meritocracy, especially when it comes to playoffs, has to matter. What's the point of having playoffs if you're not going to reward the teams that actually stayed consistent the entire season? That were consistently winning, that were consistently week in and week out, were playing very well. That's the whole point of the playoffs. Because it is a competition for the best of the best that made it through from week 1 to week 34. That is the whole point. That is the entire point of the playoffs, right? That is the reason for playoffs. It's a sporting meritocracy. That's why you have a regular season, to get to that point at the end of the season where you're competing for championships. And by the way, if something crazy were happened where like, the 9th or 10th seed went on a crazy run, that is, as far as I'm concerned, that's a Mickey Mouse trophy. Barely squeaking into the playoffs and going on a run does not equate you are the best team in the league. You are just the best team for that 2 weeks. Anyway, let's see. Zero cool in real life. I can understand how you got that name, my friend. Keep an open mind and really dig in. I had some. Okay. Red Jean says Glory USA. I love it. I love it. But the reality is, it's like if you want to have legitimacy in your playoffs, be it on sporting meritocracy. If you're not going to have promotion relegation, okay, that's fine. But whatever. I can live with that. But the reality is, it's like if you're going to reward mediocrity with teams that kind of hovered all season without really doing too much, and you're going to reward that, yeah, that's kind of where you lose credibility, because your playoffs essentially mean nothing. It really does. It really does, man. No, they're actually playoff games. They're playoff games. That's why they're called play-ins. They're actually considered playoff games, right? Each league currently has a playoff game, 8 versus 9. It's still considered a playoff game. Yeah, I understand. It's going to be one single bracket. It's still dumb. It's still dumb. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like last year was a good example of what a good old fashioned barn burning relegation scrap will do for you in the Premier League. That thing went down to the wire. That thing went down between Spurs and West Ham. That shit went down to the wire. And that was one of the most that was that the atmosphere at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Everton, the last game of the season, that was the exact same environment, trying to battling out to see who wins the trophy at the last game, the last game of the season. It had that exact same feel. And you can't manufacture that. It's something that is organic. And in some sense, I felt bad for West Ham fans. But that being said, that's what happens when that same thing with Spurs fans. That's what happens when your club is ultimately mismanaged. There is that possibility that you go down. That would be a thing of beauty in American soccer. That would be a thing of beauty. I would love seeing Montreal getting relegated. Let's see. MLS champs have been at least the 8th seed. I don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me. Let's see. So let's see. Savinho for 85 million and Marmoush for only 50. Something isn't right there. Yeah, because Marmoush is the better player. Marmoush is the better player. It kind of goes without saying. Savinho is going to be an 85 million pound paperweight. Good to see you, by the way, Adam. But yeah, that is the crazy thing about this proposal. Like everything else I'm on board with, right? Because eventually you're going to have to prioritize competition. And so from that standpoint, I'm 100% okay with the proposals, except for this, obviously, because I've just spent the last 45 minutes taking a giant shit on it because it needs to be. But the interesting thing about this is that I actually want to see how teams react when they can just spend, and there's no goofy roster rules that essentially what it is like it's what I like to call and especially this version of a cap league is essentially soccer communism, right? Each team has the exact same roster slots in which to build a team, right? Everybody is equal. It was designed to force parity, and that is going to go away. And so you're going to see GMs. You're going to find out who the better GMs are. In some context, you probably can kind of decipher that right now, but you're going to see teams be creative. You're going to see teams be far more savvy, and I'm kind of curious to see exactly how that plays out. I'm happy that they're getting rid of allocation money as well too, because that's something that's been needed to be gone for a decade now. I don't know how I feel about keeping the DPs at 3, but whatever, I can live with that. But that being said, it's like if you're a team that doesn't spend money, if you're a fan of a team that doesn't spend money, and not only did you not spend money, not only did you make the effort to try to be competitive, and you were just, kind of like a hanger-on in the league. I know the idea that you're going to be rewarded for, not doing your part seems insane to me. It's like that GIF, right? I did my part. I did my part. I didn't do shit. Like that would be like that is the overall that is the overall arching way to describe this. Let's see. Kulusevski is close. I know, man. I know. I can't wait. Decky is my guy, man. I get like this is a big Decky channel, by the way. And yeah, like if I believed in bromances, that would be my bromance. I don't believe in them though, so I can have a favorite player and not make it gay. I love it. All right, guys, I've had fun tonight. I really have. Please do me a favor, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell. And if you guys are watching it on TikTok Live, man, the link is in the description. So show your boy some love tonight. Head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. I will be back. In a few days. I do want to talk a little bit about Spurs, so maybe that'll be a Spurs. Maybe that'll be a Spurs show as we get set. This will be after the Carabao Cup clash between Charlton and Athletic. Hopefully, we will advance. That would be absolutely lovely. And as we get set for Newcastle on the weekend, because we're going to have a couple new players in the starting 11, so it should look infinitely better. Hopefully. But that's going to do it for me, guys. It's been fun. By the way, if anybody tells you that, this proposal for an expanded MLS playoffs is a good thing, pushback. Take care, guys.
Rusted goalposts under fading skies.